Commander, let's light the sky. Training sharper drone pilots, learning how to fly. Mission ready mindset, safety leading every plan. Skills that build confidence from takeoff through the scan. Tune in at Sky Commander, come join the crew today. Learning smart, fly with purpose, level up your way. We see more, no sooner, that's the edge we're here to spread. See above, go beyond, get ahead.
Okay, let's get started. Picture this, all right? You are exactly 19 minutes into a highly complex commercial utility inspection.
Right. The adrenaline of the initial takeoff is totally gone, and you are just deep in the zone.
Yeah, you are locked in. I mean, you are flying this professional enterprise-grade drone system.
Yeah.
The aircraft is hovering rock steady, like 90 feet up, inspecting this massive transmission tower.
And everything is going perfectly.
Everything. Your visual observer is standing a few yards away, doing their job flawlessly, calling out a helicopter that's miles off in the distance. And the client representative who hired you, they're standing right next to you, drinking a coffee, totally relaxed.
Best case scenario.
Right. They are thrilled. The mission is going flawlessly. And then you hear the crunch of gravel.
Oh, no.
Yeah. A white truck pulls up right to the edge of your landing zone. A person in a high visibility vest steps out, walks right up to you holding a clipboard, and asks one very simple, very quiet question. Who is the pilot in command, and can I see your documents?
Ah, yes. The clipboard moment. I mean, that is the ultimate stress test for literally any aviation professional.
The clipboard moment. And honestly, that is exactly what our deep dive is all about today. We are unpacking this incredibly detailed operational manual. It's called the Command Binder, Professional Drone Compliance and Inspection Readiness.
It's a fantastic source text.
It really is. But I want to set the parameters for you, the listener, right out of the gate here. Whether you are a professional drone pilot flying, multi-thousand-dollar rigs, or maybe you're someone who manages complex logistics or a project manager in any highly regulated field.
Do the principles apply everywhere?
Exactly. This deep dive is not about just memorizing legal statutes or reciting dry aviation codes.
No, because memorizing the law is just the baseline. I mean, it's the bare minimum requirement. What we are really looking at here is the psychology of compliance.
Right.
We're looking at human factors under intense, sudden pressure, how you physically and, more importantly, mentally organize your knowledge.
Because the entire premise of this manual is about building an operational system that is so airtight and so thoroughly rehearsed that when that white truck pulls up, it doesn't trigger a physiological crisis.
Exactly. The encounter just turns into a remarkably boring, calm, and predictable conversation. Which is what you want.
You want boring.
You really do.
Yeah.
The core thesis of the source material is that calm is not a personality trait. Calm is a system.
I love that.
Yeah, it is a structure you build long before the pressure ever actually arrives.
Okay, let's unpack this idea of systemized calm, because the source material introduces this concept with a brilliant and honestly agonizing micro story.
Oh, the scavenger hunt story.
Yes, the story of the pilot who had everything except a system. Let's look at the mechanics of this failure because it's so relatable. We have a pilot doing a completely routine roof inspection near a busy commercial park. And on paper, legally speaking, this pilot is flawless.
Right. They've done all the homework.
Every single piece of homework. The drone is fully registered with the federal authorities. The pilot holds a valid current certificate. They checked the airspace before takeoff, confirmed they're in uncontrolled Class G airspace.
The client got written permission from the property owner to take off and land.
Exactly. There is literally not a single aviation statute being violated here.
But an operation is way more than just a collection of legal facts. It is a dynamic environment.
And the environment shifts drastically in this story. A police officer arrives because someone in the adjacent office building made a public complaint. Maybe they, heard the buzzing and thought they were being surveilled or something.
Happens all the time.
So the officer walks up, very polite but very direct, and asks, "Are you allowed to fly that thing here?" And the pilot, who possesses all the correct legal facts, suddenly realizes they don't have the right folder.
And this is exactly where cognitive tunneling begins.
The digital scavenger hunt from hell. The pilot starts sweating. Their heart rate spikes. They have to prove their identity right. So they pull up their pilot certificate on one phone. But then the officer asks about the drone itself.
And now the panic sets in.
Right. Now the pilot is digging through their email app, trying to search for the registration PDF from 3 years ago. The site survey and the hazard assessment, oh, that is just a screenshot buried in some text thread with their visual observer.
It's a nightmare.
And the client's written authorization to be on the property is attached to an invoice deep in some cloud drive. It takes this pilot 10 minutes of frantic swiping, muttering, waiting for loading screens, just to prove they're legally allowed to stand there.
Just consider the optics of those 10 minutes. I mean, even though not a single regulation was broken, the pilot looks completely incompetent.
They look guilty.
They look incredibly guilty.
But let me challenge that interpretation for a second, because I can hear a lot of people listening to this and thinking, okay, sure, it's a little awkward to have to dig through your phone in front of a cop. But if you haven't done anything illegal, why does it actually matter if it takes 5 or 10 minutes to find a PDF? Isn't the law just about the objective facts? Like, if the fact is that I am legally certified, who cares how long it takes me to prove it?
See, you are assuming the inspector, whether that is the Federal Aviation Administration, Transport Canada, local law enforcement, you're assuming they are only evaluating the piece of paper.
Right.
But they aren't. They're evaluating your operation's overall safety culture.
Break down safety culture in this specific context.
Well, aviation safety relies heavily on predictability and control. An inspector knows that a drone is a complex, high-energy flying system. You are operating heavy machinery with rapidly spinning carbon fiber blades.
Basically flying blender.
Exactly. Flying blenders the airspace above people, above property, above critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
That requires deep, deep organizational discipline.
Right.
So if your landing zone immediately devolves into a panicked, disorganized scavenger hunt just to locate your basic registration, what does that communicate about your ability to handle a real crisis?
Yeah, that I absolutely don't have my act together when things go wrong.
It implies a total cascade of failures. Because if you can't quickly locate your legal authority to operate, how on earth are you going to handle a lithium polymer battery fire?
Oh, man, yeah.
How are you going to handle a sudden loss of the command link when the drone just flies away on its own? Scrambling implies you are not in control of your environment. And in the eyes of a regulator, the moment you appear to lose control of your environment, your legal standing starts to erode rapidly.
The source material provides a really great anchor for this. It calls it the evidence package, or the command binder. It states that at any given moment on a job site, you must be able to instantly, without digging, without swiping through apps, without relying on a spotty cell signal, answer 3 fundamental questions.
Right.
1, who is in charge of this operation? 2, what authority allows this operation to occur? And 3, where is the physical proof?
And if you present those 3 answers clearly, immediately, and without any hesitation, the tension dissolves instantly. I mean, the official inspection stops feeling like a hostile interrogation, and it just transforms into a routine, boring, administrative checkpoint.
So to achieve that level of immediate clarity, we really have to understand the specific language these officials are speaking.
The vocabulary is key.
Because the aviation world is just drowning in acronyms, and if you use the wrong terminology, you immediately out yourself as an amateur. Let's decode the alphabet soup of the sky.
Understanding the vocabulary is basically your armor. So let's start by separating the cast of characters here. You have the regulator, and you have the inspector.
Okay, so the regulator, that's Transport Canada, Civil Aviation up north, or the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA in the United States. The text describes them as the referees who write the rule book for the national airspace.
Exactly. And the inspector is the actual person who walks up to your job site.
The person with the clipboard.
The person with the clipboard. This might be an official investigator from the FAA or Transport Canada, or depending on the jurisdiction, it could just be local law enforcement, transportation security officials, or maybe even a fire marshal.
So the regulator sits in a federal office drafting the playbook, and the inspector is the umpire on the field checking to make sure the play you are running actually matches what is in the book.
A perfect distinction. Now, the most critical character on that field is the RPIC, the remote pilot in command.
The captain of the ship.
The captain of the ship. And this isn't just a fancy job title. It is a profound legal distinction. The RPIC is the individual who holds the ultimate, final, non-delegable safety authority for that flight.
Non-delegable, meaning you can't pass the buck.
You absolutely cannot pass the buck. If the drone strikes a building or violates restricted airspace, the regulatory hammer falls squarely on the RPIC.
But what about the PMC? The person manipulating the controls, the manual separates these 2 roles, and I want to test this with a driving analogy, okay?
Let's hear it.
Let's say I'm on a long road trip with a friend. It's my car, it's my insurance policy, I plan the route. I'm the captain of the road trip, right?
Yeah.
But I get tired, so I let my friend drive. He is the one with his hands on the steering wheel. If he gets pulled over for doing 90 in a 65 zone, he's the one getting the speeding ticket. The police don't ticket the passenger just because they own the car.
Right.
So translating that to drones, if I am the certified RPIC holding the license, but I let my friend hold the remote controller, he is the PMC. Can he use the passenger shield if an inspector walks up? Can he say, hey, don't look at me, I was just holding the sticks. I'm not the pilot in command.
The source material firmly destroys that magic shield idea.
It doesn't work.
It does not work. Aviation liability does not mirror highway liability at all. While the RPIC holds the ultimate supervisory authority, physical manipulation of aircraft controls is an actively regulated action.
So you can't just play dumb because you don't have the actual license in your pocket.
You absolutely cannot. The act of holding those sticks means you are participating in a regulated aviation operation. Period. If you do something reckless, saying I was just holding the controller is not a legal defense against enforcement action. You are part of the system.
Got it.
And another crucial part of that system is the visual observer, the VO.
Okay, so if the RPIC is the driver in our analogy, the VO is the highly trained, incredibly observant passenger in the front seat saying, heads up, there is a vehicle merging fast on the right.
Exactly.
They are the dedicated second set of eyes, scanning the airspace for encroaching aircraft and scanning the ground for hazards so the pilot can remain entirely focused on the telemetry and the mission profile.
Right. Now, how far those eyes are legally allowed to see brings us to the operational distances. These are the three major V acronyms that govern almost all commercial drone flights. VLOS, EVLOS, and BVLOS.
Let's walk through these, starting with the VLS, visual line of sight.
This is the foundational operational standard. Almost everyone starts here. The memory aid provided in the text is excellent. Visual location of ship.
Okay.
This mandates that you, or your required visual observer, must be able to look up and see the physical aircraft with your own unaided eyes.
Unaided meaning no binoculars.
No binoculars, no telephoto lenses, no zooming in with a camera. You must see it well enough to determine its altitude, its attitude meaning its orientation and direction of flight, and critically, whether it is on a collision course with any other aircraft or obstacle.
So in a VLOS operation, the human eye is literally the primary safety layer separating your drone from a disaster.
Precisely. Then we step up to EVLOS, extended visual line of sight.
And the memory aid here is eyes via linked observer system.
Right. You are extending the operation beyond the pilot's direct view. Maybe you're flying around a large structure like a cooling tower or over a ridgeline, but you are doing it by utilizing highly trained visual observers stationed downrange who are actively communicating with the pilot.
Like a relay.
Exactly like a relay. And the manual explicitly warns against treating this casually. EVLOS is not just your buddy standing a mile down the road looking at his phone and occasionally glancing up at the sky.
Yeah, yelling, looks good.
Right, no. It requires a structured, regulator-approved procedure, often with redundant communication channels like VHF radios, to ensure latency doesn't cause a crash. Because if the VO sees a helicopter and their cell phone call drops,
that's a disaster.
It is a massive disaster. And finally, we arrive at the holy grail of the commercial drone industry right now, BVLOS, Beyond Visual Line of Sight.
Beyond vision, lots of systems.
Lots of systems.
Yeah.
Because if the human eye, both yours and your observers, is no longer the primary safety layer keeping that drone from colliding with a Cessna or a medevac helicopter, your technology and your paperwork have to carry that massive burden.
You are relying entirely on the machine.
Entirely. You are relying on telemetry data, forward-facing onboard cameras, radar, and really sophisticated detect and avoid, or DAA, systems. The aircraft literally must be able to sense an impending collision and autonomously maneuver out of the way.
Which totally explains why the authorizations required to fly BVLOS are so incredibly intense. I mean, you can't just go to a consumer electronics store, buy a drone off the shelf, and fly it 3 miles away behind a mountain range just because the battery allows it.
You definitely cannot.
Which brings us to the actual paperwork, the specific authorizations.
Let's break down how you actually get permission to do these complex operations. In Canada, when you want to operate outside the standard rule set, you generally apply for an SFOC RPAS, a Special Flight Operations Certificate.
Okay.
In the United States, under the Part 107 rules, you would apply for a waiver.
Let's bring it back to a roadway analogy to make this really concrete for people listening. A standard drone operation, say VLOS, under 400 feet, Flying during daylight hours. That's like driving your standard sedan on a public highway. You just need your basic driver's license.
Right.
But applying for an SFOC in Canada or a Part 107 waiver in the US?
Right.
Man, that is like telling the government you want to drive a massive 18-wheel flatbed truck carrying an oversized 40-foot wind turbine blade down that exact same highway at 2 in the morning.
You cannot do that with a normal license.
No, you need a highly specific, customized permit where you prove exactly how you're going to mitigate the extreme risks you are introducing to the public.
That captures the essence perfectly. A waiver is a formal acknowledgement from the regulator that you are deviating from the standard safety rules, but you have introduced alternative safety measures like specialized lighting, restricted access zones, or advanced radar that keep the overall risk at an acceptable level.
Makes sense.
And then completely separate from waivers, you have airspace authorizations.
Right. And in the U.S., this is often handled through the LANC system, Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability.
This is a vital distinction that trips people up. A waiver gives you permission to break a specific operational rule, like flying over people or flying at night. An airspace authorization simply gives you permission to exist in a specific piece of controlled sky.
So if the local air traffic control tower manages the traffic pattern in, say, a 5-mile radius around a major airport, you cannot just sneak into that airspace because you are flying low over a house. You need their explicit digital blessing.
Exactly. So now we have the core vocabulary down. We understand the RPIC, the difference between waivers and airspace authorizations, and the limits of visual line of sight. But here is the critical pivot in the manual.
Let's hear it.
Knowing all these technical terms is completely, utterly useless if you do not know how to communicate them to the specific human being standing in front of you.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because having this PFRO folder and all this technical knowledge is great, but handing a dense 20-page legal waiver to a neighbor who is just complaining about noise is going to backfire spectacularly.
It's going to make them so much angrier.
Oh, absolutely. So how do we tailor this legal armor to the specific person asking the question?
Field wisdom number 4 in the text outlines this dynamic beautifully. It identifies 3 distinct audiences that might approach your job site. And the crucial insight here is that each audience cares about a completely different set of priorities. Let's look at audience 1, the regulator or the inspector. What is their primary concern?
Aviation compliance, pure and simple. They want to see the pilot certificate, the aircraft registration, the airspace approvals. They want to verify you are operating within the strict boundaries of federal law.
Right. Now consider audience 2, the client or the site owner. What is their priority?
I mean, they usually don't care at all about your LANC approval or your Part 107 status, as long as it doesn't get them in trouble. They care about the schedule. Are we getting the inspection data we paid for? Are we going to finish before the rain starts at 5 p.m.? Is this operation safe for my employees who are walking around the job site?
Spot on. And finally, audience 3, the public, the bystander on the sidewalk walking their dog.
They care about nuisance factors. They care about noise. They care about privacy. They're looking at the camera on the drone and wondering, is that thing recording my backyard? Or conversely, they might just be a tech enthusiast who wanders over and wants to know what kind of battery life you're getting.
And disaster on a job site almost always strikes when a pilot mixes up these audiences.
The manual emphasizes this so strongly. You do not deliver a dense legal lecture about 14 CFR Part 107 regulations to a construction manager who just wants to know if the roof imagery is in focus.
No, their eyes will glaze over.
And you certainly do not give a sales pitch about the dynamic range of your drone's 4K camera to a federal aviation inspector who just demanded your pilot certificate.
You must match your response to the audience's underlying concern. But let's analyze the most common point of friction, which usually occurs between the client and the regulator. The text introduces this concept called the two-key mission door.
This is a fascinating analogy. The concept is that to legally unlock a mission, you need 2 distinct keys. Key 1 is site permission. The physical landowner unlocks the gate on the ground, allowing you to stand there. Key 2 is aviation authority. The federal regulator unlocks the sky above the ground, allowing you to actually fly.
Yes.
But let me push back on how robust this really is in the real world.
Go for it.
Let's say I am hired by the CEO of a massive logistics corporation. They own a 40-story private office park. They own the land, they own the buildings, they own the parking structures. They explicitly sign a contract demanding that I fly my drone over their own property to inspect their HVAC units.
Okay.
Why should the FAA or Transport Canada have any jurisdiction over that? It is entirely private property. If the owner says fly, I should just fly, right?
This is myth number 2 in our source material, and it stems from a really ancient property law concept, the idea that whoever owns the soil owns it all the way up to heaven.
Right, right.
Aviation law obliterated that concept a century ago. A client cannot waive federal aviation rules. Yes, the CEO owns the dirt, they own the concrete, but they do not own the national airspace. The regulator owns the sky.
So the CEO has the power to say, yes, you can stand in my parking lot, but they have absolutely zero legal power to say, yes, you can fly at 500 feet, or yes, you can fly without a valid pilot license.
Precisely. You need both keys. Site permission and airspace authorization are completely separate legal buckets.
Right.
The client cannot absorb your pilot responsibility through a contract.
Even if they put it in writing.
Even if they put it in writing, it's legally void. If you fly illegally over their building and cause an incident, the FAA does not revoke the CEO's business license. They revoke your pilot certificate.
That clarifies the liability immensely. Interacting with these different audiences. Let's do a role-play scenario here.
Yep.
Let's say I'm a member of the public. I live next door to the commercial building you are inspecting. I walk up to your landing zone, clearly agitated, and I say, hey, why is that drone hovering right over my fence line? Are you taking pictures of my yard? What is your response? Because the natural human instinct is to get defensive, cross your arms, and start aggressively quoting airspace law.
Which is the absolute fastest way to escalate a simple inquiry into a police call. If you start quoting federal law, you are treating a concerned neighbor like a regulator. Instead, you keep the interaction respectful, bounded, and completely focused on de-escalation.
So it's the script.
According to the manual, your response should be, I understand your concern. I'm operating a regulated drone mission right now, and I need to keep the aircraft safe. I can answer general questions after I land, or you can contact the site representative over there.
Look at the psychological architecture of that response. I'm operating a regulated mission that subtly establishes your legal authority without sounding arrogant. I need to keep the aircraft safe. That signals to the agitated neighbor that if they continue shouting at you, they are the ones creating a safety hazard.
Exactly.
And critically, you defer the detailed conversation until after the drone is safely on the ground. You refuse to get pulled into a sidewalk debate while holding a live controller.
It creates a firm boundary. Now, analyze how that contrasts with your response to an inspector.
Right.
If I walk up to your site with a clipboard wearing an agency jacket and say, I'm an aviation inspector, can I see your documents?
Yeah.
Your script changes entirely.
The manual script for that is absolutely, I'll provide the required aviation documents. Can I confirm your name, agency, and what specific documents you are requesting?
Why does that specific phrasing work so effectively?
Well, first, the word absolutely shows immediate, unhesitating cooperation. You aren't being adversarial at all. But the second half, asking for their name, their agency, and their specific request, that immediately establishes a formal record.
Yes.
It signals to the inspector that you are a meticulous professional who documents every interaction. And asking what specific documents is just a brilliant firewall. It prevents you from just handing them your unlocked iPad and passively saying, here, look at whatever you want.
It forces the official to state their regulatory objective up front. Knowing how to speak to these audiences is absolutely vital. But what are the underlying operational rules that keep you safe while you are having these conversations?
Right, the unwritten rules.
That brings us to the field wisdoms. These are the survival rules that separate seasoned, resilient professionals from amateurs who just crammed to pass a multiple choice test.
Let's dive deep into these, starting with Field Wisdom 1. Aviate, communicate, document, in that specific order. The flight always comes first.
This is the most non-negotiable rule in all of aviation, manned or unmanned. When an official, especially law enforcement, approaches you, your physiological, evolutionary response is going to be to look away from your screen, look down at them, make eye contact, and engage in conversation.
It's just human nature to look at someone talking to you.
It is. But if you do that while you are manually flying a drone near a complex steel structure, you are going to experience task saturation, lose situational awareness, and crash. You cannot abandon the controls to argue, and you cannot look down at a binder while the aircraft is drifting in the wind.
The phrase the manual suggests is, I'm the pilot in command, I'm managing an active flight, I'll land or stabilize the operation, and then I can speak with you safely. It confirms you recognize their authority, it shows you intend to cooperate, but it prioritizes the physics of the aircraft above the social interaction.
Exactly.
Let's move to field wisdom 8, because I think this one is incredibly insidious. The cool shot trap.
Oh, the immense pressure of the creative environment.
Imagine the scenario. You are flying on a high-end commercial film set. You've got a director, a producer. The client is hovering behind a monitor right behind you. The sun is setting, and you have gorgeous golden hour light for exactly 6 more minutes.
The clock is ticking.
Right. You have been flying strictly by the book all day, but then the director points at a skyscraper and says, "Hey, can you just push the drone out a little further? Just take it behind that building. I want to see the skyline reveal as you come around the glass. Just do it this once."
Such a common scenario.
You know, as the pilot, that flying behind that glass building breaks your visual line of sight. It pushes the operation into BVLOS, which you absolutely do not have a waiver for. The creative pressure to please the client in that moment is massive.
This scenario exposes the profound difference between a camera operator and a pilot.
Tell me more about that.
A camera operator's primary objective is acquiring the shot at all costs.
Yeah.
A pilot's primary objective is managing the boundaries of their legal authority.
Mm.
The wisdom here is understanding that the aviation regulator does not care how cinematic the footage is.
They really don't.
If you lose your command link behind that building and the drone crashes through a glass atrium, the FAA is not going to accept, "But the lighting was incredible," as a valid defense.
Yeah, that won't hold up in court.
No. The professional pilot who survives in this industry long term is the one who has a psychological fortitude to look the director in the eye and say, "The shot is not worth violating the authority of the operation."
It takes real backbone to kill a shot when thousands of dollars are on the line. What about field wisdom 5? Never guess in front of authority.
This raises an important question. Consider the psychology behind guessing. If a federal inspector points to a highway and asks, "Are you allowed to fly this close to moving traffic?" Why do so many pilots immediately say, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're allowed. I think my airspace app said it was fine"?
Because they are terrified. They want to appear cooperative and knowledgeable. They assume that saying, "I don't know," makes them look incompetent to an official, so they invent an answer that sounds reasonably confident.
It is a totally natural human instinct to please authority, but legally, it is disastrous. The text introduces the ABC rule: accurate, brief, confirmed.
Okay, ABC.
Guessing destroys your credibility instantly. If you guess, and your guess is factually incorrect, you have just provided false information to a federal agent.
Oh.
Yes. The disciplined professional answer is, "I want to answer your question accurately. Let me check the specific conditions of my authorization and confirm that for you."
Reframing it like that is so powerful. Saying, "Let me check my binder," isn't a sign of ignorance. It's a demonstration of meticulous operational discipline. You are showing the inspector that your safety culture relies on documented facts, not gut feelings or vibes.
Relying on documented facts leads directly into field wisdom 6, boundaries and data.
The absolute danger of the "here, just look at my phone" response.
Being polite and cooperative with an inspector or a police officer does not mean you casually hand over an unlocked tablet or smart control.
Never do that.
Think about the payload on that device. You might be carrying proprietary client data. You might have high-resolution thermal imagery of critical infrastructure, like power grid substations or telecommunications towers. You might have sensitive private information.
So if a local police officer walks up and casually says, "Let me see what you've been recording up there," you don't just hand them the controller and let them scroll through your gallery.
No. You employ controlled language. You say, "I can provide the required aviation documents. If you need operational records beyond that, please identify the specific regulatory request, and I will preserve the records and respond through the proper legal channel."
It remains respectful, it acknowledges their authority, but it builds a massive legal firewall protecting your client's data from unwarranted search.
Exactly. And finally, we have Field Wisdom 9, logs tell the story.
The quote from the manual for this one is actually haunting. It says, "If you are in the room, your flight log speaks for you. If your flight log is empty, someone else writes the narrative."
Telemetry is the ultimate objective witness. I mean, if an incident occurs, say a homeowner complains that you were flying recklessly over their backyard at 2 in the afternoon, if your digital and physical logs meticulously record that at 2:00 p.m. you were hovering at exactly 100 feet altitude, firmly within your planned operational boundary, directly over the client's commercial property, your log completely dismantles the emotional complaint.
Right, because the GPS coordinates, the IMU data, the stick inputs, they tell the truth.
They tell the absolute truth.
Yeah.
But if you have no logs, is their angry accusation against your word. And regulators inherently distrust operators who lack basic telemetry records.
All these wisdoms, staying calm under pressure, suppressing the urge to guess, setting strict data boundaries, logging every telemetry point, they sound fantastic in a theoretical discussion. But how do you physically manifest this philosophy in the dirt, in the heat, when the adrenaline is pumping?
You need a physical system.
Right. Let's look at the architecture of that system through the 5-step CALM method.
The physical anchor of this system is the PROF folder. PROFF. This is the tangible object you hand over when the clipboard arrives.
Let's break down the anatomy of this acronym.
Okay.
P stands for Pilot Certificate and Government-Issued Photo ID.
Essential.
R stands for registration for the specific aircraft, and proof of your recency, meaning documentation, proving you didn't just pass your written test 5 years ago and haven't flown since.
Right. You need to show you are current.
O stands for operating authority. Are you flying under standard Part 107 rules, an approved waiver, an SFOC?
Yep.
The second O stands for on-site permission, the physical or digital signature from the client authorizing you to access the property. And finally, F stands for flight records and logs.
That's the PROF folder.
But I am going to challenge the manual really heavily on this next point. It states you need physical or locally saved copies. Come on. It is the 2020s. We have 5G networks. We have seamless cloud storage. Why on earth is the source material demanding that I carry a physical binder or an offline SD card? My entire professional life is in the cloud. It seems incredibly antiquated.
It seems antiquated right up until the exact moment it saves your career.
Right. Convince me.
Let's look at the harsh realities of field operations. Where do complex utility inspections happen? Often in deep valleys, or under massive steel bridges in rural areas, or deep inside sprawling concrete industrial facilities. What happens to cellular infrastructure in those environments?
The signal degrades. You drop to 0 bars.
Or electromagnetic interference from high-tension power lines completely destroys your signal. Concrete rebar acts as a Faraday cage. Now imagine the inspector asks for your Part 107 certificate. You confidently open your cloud app and the screen goes blank, asking you to log in.
Oh man, the spinning wheel of death.
Yes. You enter your password. The app says, for your security, we've sent a 2-factor authentication code via text message to your device, a device that has absolutely 0 service.
You are locked out.
You're totally locked out. You cannot access your credentials. The regulator standing in front of you does not care about your IT infrastructure issues. They only care that you cannot produce your legally required aviation documents upon request. I promise it's in my email inbox. Is a legally insufficient answer.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
You must have digital files saved locally to the tablet's hard drive, and ideally a printed quick reference card in your hard case.
That is a brutal reality check. The cloud is great until it evaporates. Okay, so you have your Prufo folder built, saved locally, printed out. The inspector walks up. How do you physically sequence your actions? That brings us to the 5-step CALM method. Let's walk through the execution. Step 1 is C, control the aircraft.
We discussed the mechanics of this earlier. Stabilize the task saturation, put the drone in a stable hover, or initiate a safe landing sequence. Ensure the airspace is secure before you engage socially.
Make the physical environment safe first. Step 2 is A. Ask who is requesting and why.
Document the official. Politely request their name, their agency affiliation, and the specific regulatory reason for the contact.
Step 3 is L. Locate required documents.
Hand over to the P folder. Provide exactly what is legally required and absolutely nothing more. Do not initiate a data dump of irrelevant information.
Don't give them your whole life story.
No, just the facts.
And step 4 is M. Make a record.
And this is the step almost every amateur skips. The second the inspector walks away, before you put the drone back in the air, you log the interaction. You record the date, the time, the name of the official, what specific documents they reviewed, and what the outcome was.
Why is logging the interaction immediately so critical? Why not just do it when you get back to the office or hotel room?
Because human memory degrades so rapidly under stress, and meticulous record-keeping protects you from the long tail of a public complaint. Let's look at a scenario. A local police officer responds to a noise complaint from a neighbor. You apply the calm method, show them your papers, the officer says, okay, everything looks in order, and they drive away. You assume the situation is totally resolved.
Right, crisis averted.
But 3 weeks later, that angry neighbor escalates the issue. They write a furious letter to their city council, or they file a formal complaint with the FAA, claiming a rogue drone operator was harassing the neighborhood, invading privacy, and the local police refuse to do anything about it.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Because you log the interaction in real time, you possess contemporaneous timestamped proof that a law enforcement officer reviewed your operation in the moment and found it fully compliant. It neutralizes the delayed attack.
It takes you from being a defensive, reactive participant to being an active, documented professional. Okay, so analyzing the CALM method conceptually in a studio is one thing. Executing it when the flashing lights actually pull up to your site is a completely different psychological beast. Let's put this philosophy to the test using the war room scenarios provided in the manual.
These case files are excellent stress tests for the systems we've discussed. Let's analyze scenario 1. Police on the roof.
Let's set the scene. You are conducting a commercial roof inspection in a dense suburban business park. You are hovering at 90 feet above ground level, mapping HVAC units. The flight is smooth. Suddenly, a police cruiser rolls up with its lights flashing. An officer gets out, approaches you, and says that someone in the adjacent apartment complex called 911 claiming that you are Peeping Tom and that you are spying through their bedroom windows.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. You are the RPIC. The property manager who hired you is standing right there watching this unfold. What is your immediate action?
The very first step is the C in calm. Control the aircraft. You tell the officer, I am managing an active flight. I will bring the aircraft down safely and then show you my documents. But the real test in this scenario is the human factor, the emotional trigger of the accusation.
If someone accuses me of being a peeping Tom or spying, my blood pressure is instantly spiking. That is a highly offensive personal accusation when I am literally just trying to inspect some rusty air conditioning units.
And that is exactly where you must suppress your ego. Do not take offense to the word spying. You have to understand the psychology of the general public.
Tell me more.
The public does not understand payload specifications, focal lengths, or enterprise drone operations. A wide-angle 24mm equivalent lens physically cannot spy into a window from 100 feet away. It just sees reflections. But the public doesn't know that. They hear a buzzing noise, they see a flying camera, and their brain fills in the threat using highly emotional language.
So they assume the worst.
They do. Your job is not to educate the police officer on optics and lens compression. Your job is to remain emotionally flat.
So you land, you pull out your proof folder, you systematically show the officer your pilot certificate, your federal registration, the site permission from the property manager standing right next to you, and the defined mission scope. You establish immediately that this is a commercial, authorized, tightly bounded flight.
Right.
And critically, as we discussed with data boundaries earlier, you do not hand the officer the remote controller to scroll through the high-resolution photos of the roof just to prove you weren't looking at the apartments.
Exactly. You let your calm, systemic response become your brand. You do not surrender client data without a warrant or specific legal process. Now, let's look at scenario 2, which introduces a significantly higher level of stress from a pure aviation standpoint. The Transport Canada flyaway.
This scenario gives me anxiety just reading the setup. Let me walk you through it. You are executing an inspection. Suddenly, your primary command link completely drops. You have zero control.
Terrifying.
The drone drifts past your planned operational boundary. Then, thankfully, the internal fail-safe logic kicks in, the drone turns around, and returns to the launch point. It lands safely, no one is injured, no property is damaged. You pack up your gear and go home. 2 days later, you get an email from a Transport Canada inspector asking for your flight logs and a formal incident analysis.
The instinct of an amateur in this situation is to minimize the event. They want to sweep it right under the rug. Hey, Transport Canada, it was just a minor glitch. The drone came right back. No one got hurt. Everything is perfectly fine.
Right, trying to make the problem disappear by acting like it wasn't a problem.
Which is the most damaging thing you could do to your reputation with a regulator. In Canada, under the RPAS rules, certain safety incidents require you to completely cease operations until you have thoroughly analyzed the event and taken corrective action. The regulator knows you experienced an uncommanded excursion from your flight area.
They already know.
They don't want an apology. They want to see how you think as a safety professional. They want root cause analysis.
So what does a professional response to that email actually look like?
You don't just attach the raw telemetry file and hit send. You write a comprehensive engineering and operational analysis. What were the environmental conditions? Was there massive 2.4 gigahertz electromagnetic interference from a nearby communications tower? What safety defenses worked?
Well, the return-to-home fail-safe logic worked perfectly because you correctly set the return altitude to clear all local obstacles.
Exactly. But what defenses failed? The primary command link failed. And most importantly, what operational procedures have you changed before your next flight? Did you update the radio firmware? Did you change your operational boundary buffers?
Show them you learned from it.
Yes. The issue isn't that you feel embarrassed about the flyaway. The issue is proving to Transport Canada that your safety management system is robust enough to prevent it from ever happening again.
That is a profound shift in mindset. You aren't defending your ego, you are demonstrating your analytical process. Okay, let's examine scenario 3, the pushy client. We touched on this conflict earlier, but let's deepen it.
It's a very common trap.
You are inspecting a massive utility structure. A site security guard drives up in a golf cart and challenges your presence, asking aggressively if you have the proper airspace approvals to be flying near their critical infrastructure. The client representative, who is paying you a substantial amount of money, leans over and whispers, "Hey, just tell him you're with us. Don't worry about the airspace stuff. Just brush them off. They'll leave you alone."
This introduces a massive conflict between economic pressure and legal obligation.
Exactly. Here is the tension. If I turn to the client, the person signing my paycheck, and say, "No, I am not going to do what you just asked. I'm going to handle this my way," don't I risk losing the contract for being perceived as difficult or bureaucratic?
You might risk a momentary friction with the client, but let's weigh the ultimate risks. If you brush off that security guard, and it turns out that guard reports your tail number to the FAA for operating in restricted airspace without LANC authorization, what happens?
I get a huge fine.
The client cannot shield you from federal enforcement. The FAA does not care that the client told you it was fine to ignore the guard. As the text explicitly states, the client can authorize access to the dirt, but they cannot absorb your pilot responsibility.
If the operation goes south, the FAA takes my license, not the client's business license. They don't care about our non-disclosure agreement or our contract.
Correct. The professional response requires polite but immovable boundary setting. You tell the client, "I appreciate the support, but I will handle the aviation compliance questions directly. You can confirm our site authorization with him while I provide the flight documents." You protect the client from assuming aviation liability, and you protect your own certificate from negligence.
Okay, the last scenario. Scenario 4, the sub-250G festival drone.
This scenario is incredibly prevalent right now, given the explosion of highly capable consumer-grade microdrones.
The setup. A pilot brings a tiny 249-gram drone to a massive outdoor music festival. A security guard walks up and asks if the flight is legal. And the pilot confidently smirks and says, "Hey man, it's a micro drone. It's under 250 grams. I don't need a license. I don't need to register it. I have no rules."
This represents myth number 4 in the text, and it is an incredibly dangerous misconception. Under 250 grams does not mean immune to the law of physics or aviation.
The quote from the manual is, "Tiny drone, real consequences."
Exactly. While a microdrone might exempt an operator from certain registration procedures or basic pilot certification tests, depending on exactly which jurisdiction you are standing in, it absolutely does not exempt you from airspace restrictions.
Right.
It does not exempt you from local event ordinances, privacy laws, or the fundamental aviation rule of not flying recklessly over a crowd of thousands of people. Consider the kinetic energy. If you fly a 249-gram piece of hard plastic and lithium batteries into the tail rotor of a medevac helicopter or drop it onto a dense crowd, it is still an aviation disaster.
A huge disaster.
The required paperwork might be slightly different, but the fundamental safety responsibility is identical to flying a 50-pound rig.
You still have to stop and verify the environment. Is it an advertised event? Is the airspace controlled? Do I have the festival organizer's explicit permission? You cannot just use the physical weight of the drone as a magical get-out-of-jail-free card.
You cannot.
Yeah.
You might have noticed throughout all these scenarios, we keep bouncing back and forth between Transport Canada rules and FAA rules.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
While the human factors, the psychology of staying calm, managing task saturation, suppressing ego are completely universal, the actual legal frameworks governing the sky are fundamentally different.
Which brings us to the broader regulatory landscape. If you are an operator working across borders, or if you simply want to understand the philosophical future of drone law and where this technology is heading, you really need to grasp how these two countries look at the sky differently.
It is a fascinating contrast in regulatory philosophy. Let's look at the Canadian mindset first. Canada's system is heavily driven by the certificate category of the pilot and the operating organization.
Right. This is governed under the CARS, the Canadian Aviation Regulations.
Yes. In Canada, your operational privileges are defined by what tier of certificate you have achieved. Are you a basic pilot? Are you an advanced pilot? Do you hold a level 1 complex certificate? Or do you require a highly specific SFOC? The pathway to saying yes to a complex mission depends almost entirely on which of those categorical organizational boxes you fit into.
The manual makes a massive point about the 2025 RPAS changes in Canada. The phrase they use is that the Canadian drone rules grew up. For a long time, the industry was basically stuck in basic or advanced and mostly limited to visual line of sight. But now they have formally integrated pathways for lower risk BVLOS, extended VLOS, operations in sheltered environments, and flying medium-sized drones up to 150 kilograms. That is a massive evolution.
Let's look at the mechanics of why Transport Canada did that. What they have done is create a highly structured, scalable framework. But, and this is the critical warning embedded in the text, more permission pathways do not equal fewer rules.
Definitely not.
It simply means there are more structured ways to get to a yes, but only if your organizational paperwork is absolutely flawless. The burden of documentation on a Canadian pilot executing a level 1 complex operation is immense.
You can't just wing it. Your pure Brofold folder needs to be an absolute masterpiece of organizational safety. Okay, so that is the Canadian certificate-driven mindset. Contrast that with the United States regulatory mindset.
The U.S. is much more rule-set and waiver-driven. For the vast majority of commercial operations, you are living inside the boundaries of Part 107.
You operate under the parameters of that specific foundational rule.
Exactly. You stay under 400 feet, you maintain visual line of sight, you don't fly over people without meeting specific category requirements. If you want to step outside those parameters, say you want to execute a BVLOS pipeline inspection, you don't necessarily go get a whole new tier of advanced pilot license like you would in Canada.
What do you do instead?
Instead, you petition the FAA for a waiver to deviate from that specific section of Part 107. You prove to them how your technology mitigates the risk of that specific deviation.
But hold on, what about Part 108? Because anyone who follows the U.S. drone industry online or listens to tech news is seeing endless buzz, articles, and speculation about Part 108. People are talking about it like the floodgates for beyond visual line of sight are finally open.
And this is where the source text issues its sternest warning regarding regulatory intelligence. Yes, there's a massive amount of buzz. But as of the framework discussed in this training, Part 108 is a proposed rule. It is a notice of proposed rulemaking.
Proposed, meaning it is not the law today.
It is not the law. The text utilizes a fantastic metaphor to clarify this danger. Part 108 is the weather forecast. Part 107 is the runway you are actually taking off from today.
Wow, that is incredibly clear.
It is a critical distinction that separates professionals from enthusiasts. Amateurs read a press release about a proposed rule, get excited, and start flying as if that rule is already active.
Which is so dangerous.
Professionals understand that until a rule goes through the entire legislative process, is finalized, published in the Federal Register, and reaches its effective date, you cannot use it as your flight authority. If an FAA inspector walks up and asks for your BVLOS authority, and you say, oh, I'm operating under the new Part 108 framework I read about online, you are going to face immediate severe enforcement action. Never use proposed rules as a legal shield.
So bringing all of this together, we have covered an immense amount of ground today in this deep dive. We started with a terrified pilot frantically swiping through their phone while a police officer watched them sweat. We decoded the alphabet soup of VLOS, BVLS, RPIC, and SFOCs. We learned that the CEO client doesn't own the sky no matter how much land they own. We built a CALM method and a physical PROF folder to survive the clipboard moment.
What all of this ultimately means is that being technically proficient at flying the drone and being legally compliant with the aviation statutes is only 50% of the job.
Only half.
The other half is physically, mentally, and emotionally managing the interaction with authority. It is the human factor. Can you suppress your ego when accused of spying? Can you provide exactly what is asked for without guessing, without oversharing client data, and without succumbing to task saturation?
To put that to the test, the text offers what it calls the Wingman Challenge. And I want to issue this challenge directly to you listening right now. Before your next mission, before your next high-stakes project, whether you are flying enterprise drones or managing complex construction sites, could you produce your core credentials, your authorizations, and your emergency procedures in under 60 seconds completely offline without relying on the internet?
If the answer is no, your operational system is fragile. The final thought to steal from the source material is this. The calmest pilot on an inspection site is usually the one with the cleanest folder.
The cleanest folder. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. We spend so much time in this industry obsessing over the technology, don't we? We argue endlessly about sensor sizes. We stress over battery life. We constantly upgrade our telemetry software. We want the drone with the most advanced AI-driven obstacle avoidance. But ultimately, when that white truck pulls up, when the gravel crunches, and the inspector steps out with the clipboard, the drone isn't the system being tested. The only system that matters in that exact moment is the human holding the controller. Are you letting the rapid pace of the technology outpace your own fundamental operational discipline? Because when the pressure hits and the cognitive tunneling begins, the only thing that keeps you from crashing is the system you built before the truck ever arrived. That's a wrap on today's mission, Commander. See above, go beyond, get ahead. For more training, tools, and intel, head to skycommander.ca. If you learned something new, share it, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star debrief.